I met Skott a long time before he started tattooing me. He was at Electric Ink down in North Kingston. All the other tattoo artists, like I said, they're very temperamental and they have attitude and they don't have time to talk to you unless you have a fistful of dollars. And I walked in and he greeted me, told him what I was interested in doing. I was interested in finishing my sleeves. And he sat me down and started looking and, you know, well, we could do this and we can go over here and we can do this and, you know, just started bouncing ideas. Probably, I'd say 2 or 3 years had passed by and I took a job driving a taxi. And I got a call from a young lady that needed a ride going somewhere, and I picked her up. And when she got in the car, I noticed that she was very tattooed. And she says, I asked her, I says, you know, told her I was sleeved, you know, getting sleeved. And I said to her, I says, do you know Skott Greene? And she goes, well, yes, I do. I'm married to him. And I completely lost it because I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I finally found him again. And she says, we have a shop. It's, you know, Doors of Perception, you know, right down on Quaker Lane. And I says, oh, great. And I said, well, we'll have to stop in and see you. So I went home, told my wife, and, you know, we all got the itch. You know, we says, well, let's go get a tattoo. Came in, and Skott was the same as he was the 4 years ago that I had met him earlier.
He was a neighbor from across the street, and the reason I started thinking about getting another tattoo is because when my son turned 18, he had pretty much scoped out Skott to have work done, and I was really amazed on how much better and much more detailed they had gotten since, you know, say in 20 years.
Tattoo conventions, and he would always bring me his portfolio. Whenever he came up to see me, he'd say, look at what I'm doing now. I did this, look at this.
He'd been drawing since he was like 2, you know, always drawing. So he knew that that was a part of his life, but he couldn't find anything that would give him money for that. And he met up with Chris from Electric Ink, and I believe it was, again, he'd always had this passion for tattoos but didn't get any. So he went in and he did get a tattoo done, and he was talking to this guy, and this guy said he could apprentice him. He saw Skott's work and said, it's beautiful, I could help you. Skott started apprenticing there, and it was a real apprenticeship aside of what the other guy in Newport had done. This was a real apprenticeship. And at Electric Ink at that time, the owner was the only tattoo artist. So Skott was the first employee, quote unquote, at Electric Ink.
Actually, Steve, who was just interviewed, the big guy there, he had met Sandy and came here to see Skott, and then they wanted to make appointments, so I came with them on their first appointment to see kind of how it was and watch them get tattooed. And so after that I made my appointment and I came and got my first one.
Skott had a piece of flash on the wall that I loved, but there was a lot of moderation I wanted done to it. It was she was with a dragon and I just didn't like it, so he took something similar to that and just sat down with a pen and started drawing it out and put it on my leg. We arranged it, and he drew it out, and when he was done I said, I'm not comfortable with her being naked. She's not fully naked, but you know, her breasts are exposed and her rear end is exposed. And Skott loved women's bodies, and he said, no, she's meant to be naked. I drew her naked, and I said, well, I'm just not comfortable walking around people seeing her naked on my leg. And he said, well, why don't you try out the nakedness for a couple of weeks, and if you're still uncomfortable, come back, I'll cover her up, no problem. Well, that was a problem, because I talked to Skott many times after, and I would say to him, I want to cover her up, and then the answers became, nope, she's intended to be naked and she's going to stay naked. And I said, no, Skott, you are going to cover her up. And he said, no, I'm not. And so it became a running feud with us. And I made an appointment with him 2 weeks prior to the fire to have the tattoo covered. we were at a gathering, so to speak, and I said to him, it was the last time I saw him alive, I said to him, I made an appointment with Sandy already. You are going to cover her. That's it, bottom line. And he said, no, I'm not. And I said, you're going to cover her? And he said, no, I'm not. And I said, do you want to make a bet? And he said, I will bet you anything that she will not get covered. And he died in the fire, and she remains uncovered and will remain. But this will continue when I go up there. This is going to be a long-standing feud with the two of us.
On my mermaids on my left arm, I have a mole on my forearm. It took him 45 minutes to try to work around it because he didn't want to have to get it into the actual part of the tattoo, but after 45 minutes he said the mole would have to become a nipple.
On February 1st last year, February 1st is my birthday, and I decided to get a tattoo on my upper back between my shoulder blades. And I had gone, and I have to say that was the most painful tattoo I've ever had. And through the whole time, I was moaning, and I was biting into a towel and anything else, and people were like, what is going on in there? And it was painful, but you know, I stuck it out, I got it done, and then I told Skott that I would never, ever, ever get another tattoo, and I wanted him to make me sign a contract that I wouldn't do that. And you know, we laughed about it. And then unfortunately 19 days later he's gone, and so some ways I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you know, I did the contract thing, and now I know that I will never get another one.